Veni Creator Spiritus, mentes tuorum visita, implesso per
And so, the readings, as always, from the traditional Mass for this Sunday, beginning with the first letter to the Corinthians from St. Paul. Brethren, if I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, and have not charity, I am become as sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. And if I should have prophecy and know all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I should have all faith, so that I could remove mountains and have not charity, I am nothing. And if I should distribute all my goods to feed the poor, and if I should deliver my body to be burned, and have not charity, it profiteth me nothing. Charity is patient, is kind. Charity envieth not, dealeth not perversely, is not puffed up, is not ambitious, seeketh not her own, is not provoked to anger, thinketh no evil, rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in the truth, beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. Charity never falleth away. Whether prophecies shall be made void, or tongues shall cease, or knowledge shall be destroyed. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect is come, that which is in part shall be done away. When I was a child, I spoke as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away the things of a child. We see now through a glass in a dark manner, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know even as I am known. And now there remain faith, hope, charity, these three. But the greatest of these is charity. From the continuation of the Holy Gospel according to St. Luke. At that time Jesus took unto him the 12, and said to them, Behold, we go up to Jerusalem, and all things shall be accomplished which were written by the prophets concerning the Son of Man. For he shall be delivered to the Gentiles, and shall be mocked, and scourged, and spit upon. And after they have scourged him, they will put him to death. And the third day he shall rise again. And they understood none of these things. And this word was hid from them. And they understood not the things that were said. Now it came to pass, when he drew nigh to Jericho, that a certain blind man sat by the wayside begging. And when he heard the multitude passing by, he asked what this meant. And they told him that Jesus of Nazareth was passing by. And he cried out, saying, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And they that went before rebuked him, that he should hold his peace. But he cried out much more, Son of David, have mercy on me. And Jesus, standing, commanded him to be brought unto him. And when he was come near, he asked him, saying, What wilt thou that I do to thee? But he said, Lord, that I may see. And Jesus said to him, Receive thy sight. Thy faith hath made thee whole. And immediately he saw and followed him, glorifying God. And all the people, when they saw it, gave praise to God. Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me, a sinner. That's one of the classic prayers of continuous prayer, of repeating that over and over again in one's heart. Jesus, Son of David, or Son of the living God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Or simply, Jesus, have mercy on me, a sinner, and many other variations. That's a powerful prayer, and as usual, there's many different graces. There are many different graces in the readings, but that one I would highlight. It's a reminder for us to have full confidence in the miraculous power of God, not only to heal bodies, but especially to heal souls. And so wherever your soul is at this moment, however weak it is, or however sinful, or however many times you might have tried and fallen, everything is possible with God as we enter into this season of Lent. But I want to share with you a reading that is one of the visions of St. Don Bosco that he was given. He was given many visions, and when he was working with these boys, so this large group of unruly boys, holy boys, everything in between, he would give them at the beginning of every year, so around New Year's, he would give them a special theme from, I think normally from a vision, at least often from a vision, that was meant to have them meditate on that throughout the entire year. And this is one that I find particularly pertinent to my work with young men, but there are a lot of lessons for all of us in it. So I may have even shared it with you once before, but it's well worth hearing every year. And so as you listen to this, as in any parable or vision, there are many different meanings and implications and things that you can draw out. And so listen and see if there's a particular point or two or several points that God is calling your attention to for your own situation. And so let me find the correct page. So this was on January the 1st, 1863. At the beginning of 1863, his congregation now had 39 members. That is the priests and brothers, the clerics, and many boys. And so all of the boys and artisans were gathered, eagerly awaiting. So every year around Christmas, Don Bosco writes, this was rather Tuesday, January the 6th. So it was the Feast of the Epiphany. It was after night prayer. So it was in the evening, and all of the artisans and students were eagerly awaiting for him. Don Bosco mounts the platform and he says, "Tonight I should give you the strena," that is the message to carry them throughout the whole year. "Every year around Christmas, I regularly beg God to suggest a strena that may benefit you all." And he goes on to talk about that, and then he gives them the strena from this vision. "It was a feast day afternoon, and you were all busy playing, while I was in my room with the Professor Thomas Valuri, a famous or well-known scholar at that time. Suddenly there was a knock at my door. I rose quickly and opened it. My mother, who's been dead now for 6 years, was standing there. Breathlessly she gasped, 'Come and see, come and see.' 'What happened?' I asked. 'Come, come,' she replied. I dashed to the balcony. Down in the playground, surrounded by a crowd of boys, stood an enormous elephant. And now recall, at that time, elephants were still being used in some parts, or had been used as animals of war, and so the much more ferocious sense to the elephant than we're used to thinking of. So he sees this elephant surrounded by a crowd of boys down in the playground. 'How did this happen?' I exclaimed. 'Let's go down.' And so they raced downstairs. As was only natural, many of you had run to the elephant. It seemed meek and tame. Playfully it lumbered about, nuzzling the boys with its trunk and cleverly obeying their orders, as though it had been born and raised at the oratory. Very many of you kept following it about and petting it, but not all. In fact, most of you were scared and fled from it to safety. Finally, you hid in the church. When the bell rang for the church service, you all trooped in. I followed, and I saw the elephant standing at the rear by the main entrance. After Vespers and the sermon, I went to the altar, assisted by 2 priests, to give benediction. At the solemn moment when you all deeply bowed to adore the Blessed Sacrament, the elephant, still standing at the end of the middle aisle, knelt down too, but with its back to the altar. Once services were over, I tried to dash out to the playground and see what would happen, but I was detained by someone. A while later, I went out through the side door and saw you at your usual games. The elephant, too, had come out of the church and idled over to the second playground, where the new wing is under construction. Mark this well, because this is precisely the place where the grisly scene I am going to describe occurred. At that moment, at the far end of the playground, I saw a banner followed by a procession of boys. It bore in huge letters the inscription, Sancta Maria, succurre miseris. Holy Mary, help your forlorn children. To everyone's surprise, that monstrous beast, once so tame, suddenly ran amok. Trumpeting furiously, it lunged forward, seized the nearest boys with its trunk, hurled them into the air or flung them to the ground, and then trampled them underfoot. Though horribly mauled, the victims were still alive. Everybody ran for dear life. Screams and shouts and pleas for help rose from the wounded. Worse, would you believe it? Some boys who were spared by the elephant, rather than aid their wounded companions, joined the monstrous brute to find new victims. As all this was happening, the little statue of the Blessed Virgin became alive and grew to life size. Then, as Our Lady raised her arms, her mantle spread open to display magnificently embroidered inscriptions. Unbelievably, it stretched far and wide to shelter all those who gathered beneath it. The best boys were the first to run to it for safety. Seeing that many were in no hurry to run to, Our Lady called out, Venite ad me omnes, come to me all. Her call was heeded, and as the crowd of boys under the mantle increased, so did the mantle grow wider. However, a few youngsters kept running about and were wounded before they could reach safety. Flushed and breathless, the Blessed Virgin continued to plead, but fewer and fewer were the boys who ran to her. The elephant, meanwhile, continued its slaughter, aided by several lads who dashed about wielding one sword or two and preventing their companions from running to Mary. The elephant never even touched these helpers. Meanwhile, prompted by the Blessed Virgin, some boys left the safety of her mantle in quick sorties to rescue some victims. No sooner did the wounded get beneath Our Lady's mantle than they were instantly cured. Again and again, several of those brave boys, armed with cudgels, went out and, risking their lives, shielded the victims from the elephant and its accomplices until nearly all were rescued. The playground was now deserted, except for a few youngsters lying about almost dead. At one end by the portico, a crowd of boys stood safe under the Virgin's mantle. At the other stood the elephant with some 10 or 12 lads who had helped it wreak such havoc and who insolently brandished their swords. Suddenly rearing up on its hind legs, the elephant changed into a horrible, long-horned specter and cast a black net over its wretched accomplices. Then, as the beast roared, a thick cloud of smoke enveloped them, and the earth suddenly gaped beneath them and swallowed them up. I looked for my mother and the professor to speak to them, but I could not find them, so I turned to look at the inscriptions on Mary's mantle and noticed that several were actual quotations or adaptations from Scripture. I read a few of them. They that explain me shall have life everlasting. He who finds me finds life. Whoever is a little one, let him come to me. Refuge of sinners, salvation of believers. Blessed are they that keep my ways. All was quiet now. After a brief silence, the Virgin, seemingly exhausted by so much pleading, soothingly comforted and heartened the boys, and quoting the inscription I had inscribed at the base of the niche, those who explain me shall have eternal life, she went on. You heeded my call and were spared the slaughter wrought by the devil on your companions. Do you want to know what caused their ruin? Sunt colloquia parva, foul talk and foul deeds. You saw your companions wielding swords. They are those who seek your eternal damnation by enticing you from me, just as they did with some schoolmates of yours. But those for whom God keeps waiting, he punishes more severely. The infernal demon enmeshed and dragged them to eternal perdition. Now, go in peace, but remember my words. Flee from companions who befriend Satan. Avoid foul conversation. Have boundless trust in me. My mantle will always be your safe refuge. Our Lady then vanished. And the boys marched again with this banner bearing the inscription, Sancta Maria, succurre miseris. And they sang, Praise, O Mary, O ye faithful tongues. And then the whole scene faded away. And St. Don Bosco concludes, My sons, now it is up to you to draw your own strena. Examine your conscience. You will know if you were safe under Mary's mantle, or if the elephant flung you into the air, or if you were wielding a sword. I can only repeat what the Virgin said, Venite ad me omnes, come all to me. Turn to her, call on her in any danger. I can assure you that your prayers will be heard. Those who were so badly mauled by the elephant are to learn to avoid foul talk and bad companions. Those who strive to entice their companions from Mary must either change their ways or leave the house immediately. If anyone wants to know the role he played, let him come to my room and I will tell him. But I repeat, Satan's accomplices must either mend their ways or go. Good night. Don Bosco had spoken with such fervor and emotion that for a whole week afterward the boys kept discussing the dream and would not leave him in peace. Every morning they crowded his confessional. Every afternoon they pestered him to find out what part they had played in the mysterious dream. But there is more. On this occasion he made a list of the wounded and of those who wielded one or two swords. He gave it to Celestine Durando, instructing him to watch over them. The cleric handed the list over to us, and it is still in our possession. The wounded were 13, probably those who had not been rescued and sheltered beneath Our Lady's mantle. 17 lads wielded one sword, only 3 had 2. Scattered marginal notes next to a boy's name indicate an amendment of life. This mirrored the true state of things was admitted by the boys themselves. As one said, I had no idea that Don Bosco knew me so well. He revealed my spiritual condition and my temptations so exactly I could find nothing to add. 2 other boys were told they were wielding swords. It's quite true, they admitted. I knew it all along. They mended their ways. And so, as Don Bosco said, I leave each of you to draw your own strena. May Our Lady, seat of wisdom, guide you and help you to flee at all times under her mantle and to be brave in fighting the good fight on behalf of your companions. Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost.